This is the main screen for the Customer Schedule Calendar. This application was designed for businesses or individuals who have a need to track information as far as a customer and all the activities that a customer may require, like callbacks, managing data, doing whatever you need to do as far as management of customer information. We're viewing the screen, and I'm going to start at the top and move down toward the lower right side, showing each individual aspect of this calendar. At the very top, you have the name and you have the main app menu. And I'm going to explain what's on the menu. You click on it, it's called a popover, and it'll come up on the screen. If you click on it again, it'll remove it from the screen. What we're going to do is we're going to show here the different screens that are included in the application. The first one is where you add a new record for a client. Now this also can be done, and I'm going to explain how you can do it. You can add a bunch of defaults for adding a client, and then you can add that information and edit it within the actual calendar without having to go to this screen. The next one is the video help tutorials, which is you're viewing right now. You went to that screen, you'd see this video. There are two ways to view the videos when you go to that screen. You could click on the browser version, or if you're in the application on an iPad or an iPhone, you could just click it, and there will be a thing that will fill the screen from YouTube and allow you to take each individual video for that particular application screen. Now, the customer list view, if you go back to the customer screen, this is a list view of individual records of each customer that you have in your database. When you're using the customer list view screen, what you can do is you can go ahead and use a find. There's a thing on the screen, on the following screens, that has a thing called do action. And what you can do, we'll explain it when we go to those screens, but what it'll allow you to do is it'll allow you to do a find and perform a find that will group either an individual record or more records that'll allow you to go ahead and find individual records you're looking for and then access that record. You can also do that if you do a find using the field in here with the search for the calendar that you're on and look for those items that might be in that screen as far as the calendar is concerned. You would take a keyword from anything, like for example the title of the record in here, or something else that's in that particular record that you're looking for, like the customer name or the date. Next would be related customer contacts. These would be contacts if you're in a business where you have additional people that are a business that you're working with, and you want to add those additional related contacts to that particular customer record. So it would give you the main or primary contact and then any related contacts within that business, and allows you to put their information within that. That's still viewable within the calendar, and when you're using or adding a new client or editing the record. Let's go down. The next one is the customer contact list view, and those are the contacts that are related here. You'll see a list of those, so you could select them from the related contacts. Customer UDFs, if you read the detail screen for this on iTunes, it explains that these are user-defined fields, and they're in a portal, and it allows you to add an infinite number of custom fields by adding a title, and then fill in the field below to add more information. Now this becomes very important if your business is unique and you need fields that are related to field inputs that you need to put in each record, or you can pick an infinite number of titles and type of records that you want to add within the portal. And you can also use a find to find how they match within different records to bring up records that would match. Activity track. Activity is anything that you're doing with a client or you need to put in it for tracking an activity that you're going to be doing. What that basically is, for example, if you had a business where you were scheduling something with them and you wanted to have that scheduled in the activity track, that would be something that you would put in there. If you're going to then look at the list view again, you can do a find on all the activities that match, or dates or types of fields that would indicate they're still pending or complete, and you can do that in a search of all the records and pull up them, or pull them up by the date that you're currently viewing. Or you can use the calendar itself within here for the current date, and let's go ahead and close this so you can see that, the current date, whatever you're doing, or you can go down. In this case, the current date is the 8th, and I'm looking at a record that's scheduled ahead for the 11th. So you have all the different records that are in here that have data in them. And for everything that has a data in it, it will have an underline on the actual date. The current date's always going to be green, and the records that you're viewing will be in blue. So I'm looking at the blue record for the 11th, and you can see it up here. You can also move between or click this to go to the current date, and then you can come back down here and click this to go back to the record on the date that you're coming up on, or you can cycle through the dates to the next date or prior date. We'll talk a little bit more about how we're going to add appointments and that information, but going back to the app menu, you have the activity track list, then the action item list. And action items are different things just like meetings and activities, but only they're the action items. And these are things that you make a note of, either that you have to do for the client or the client needs to bring you or do something for you. And those would be action items that you can track and do searches on also to find the individual activities. The meeting track is if you're in a business where you actually have face-to-face meetings with your clients, then you would have a meeting track portal and a meeting track list that allows you to do searches for different meetings and the dates that you have meetings. You can do a search to find current dates, or you can put the meetings in here. Now, one of the things you can do up here on the top we're going to be covering is that you can have individual calendars and you can add them, and I'm going to be showing you how you do those. I am the administrator for all my clients that have this application. Here's where you add appointments, and you can distribute them between these few calendars. Now, these are individual calendars. There's one for a manager and one for all the quotes if you're doing quotes. And we're going to be explaining how you change these. First of all, let's go ahead and go through where right now we're on the administrator. I'm going to leave that on there. I could do a search if I needed to and then go ahead and find the records within there. But what I'm going to do is show you going over to the log out. If you click the log out is used on any desktop, on the iPad when you're using FM Go, or on the cloud app where you have a log out where you need to log out from the cloud. So that's the different ways this application is used. And also, like if you're on Windows, you can exit the application by clicking Windows or the log out on Windows. The calendar includes a day, week, month, year, and list type of listing. This is the day calendar. And as you add new appointments in here, that day will have all the appointments for that particular day. In this case, there's only one. But if you work with the calendar, you'll see that this is the item number 7. This is the 7th calendar. If I wanted to view the record and edit it, I can click this arrow, or I can click the title over here, and the title will take me to that record so I can review it. I'm the administrator. It put me in as the administrator. And while I was in the sub-record, I made this a priority. I added the date range. In this case, it's one date, or you could put a date range if it's going to repeat over a period of time. And I put an appointment in for a single day, and I started the appointment at 8:30. That's when it was due. And in this case, I titled this and used the icon in the application for a reminder. Now, the reminder might be something where I'm going to call a client and run a call log as far as what I explained or talked to the client about. And in this case, it says reminder sample record. So I've created a sample record. If this was completed for this particular date, I would click in the checkbox to complete it. The calendar includes a delete. The only time you would ever use a delete is when you added somebody and then realized you don't want that in there. If you used this and you did the actual activity or whatever it was for the screen or the reminder, do not delete those if you completed them. That's information that is historical, and you want to be able to go back and look at it at a later date. You can go back and find that information for that particular event or task that you did. Now, if you go over to the week and look at the week, you're going to see that this particular one that we have up here for this test record shows a complete through it. It has a line through it, meaning that that was completed on Monday. And here's the current record that we're looking at and we're working with. And it gives you a little bio of what that actual application is for that particular thing that we're viewing. You can add another one by clicking on the add, or you can click on the date, which will take you, if I clicked on the 7th, it would take me back to the 7th, and the daily appointments for the 7th would show up in this screen. In the current record for the 11th, what we're doing is we can click on this either here or here to view the sub-record. We'll be covering the sub-record shortly. There is a month calendar, so if you want to look at your entire month, and I'm going to pull this down a little bit. Okay, on the month calendar, you see the individual records, for example, one that's concluded and one that's coming up. So you get a range of it, and it's only 2 days away. So you can go in here and realize what calendar things you have for the month. On the year, it's just a little more broad, and you have the things where you can look at the entire year all the way through by scrolling this and going down through and scrolling through the different records to see what's coming up. A list, and this is going to really pop the screen. A list view is where you have a list view of all the records that are currently in, both completed and also pending. In this particular case, we had one here for 11th, and I wanted to show you a distance one. This is all the way back to October 28th, 12th. If I click in here, I can actually look at this record. It'll bring it up on the screen. And say, for example, it needed to be repeated for whatever reason, say like the client canceled and then called back and wanted to go back, you could go ahead and bring this up and change the dates and date range in order to get you a new record that it will be for that particular date or date range. Okay, let's go back to the day, and I want to show you something else about this. If we had a record that was past completion, and say, for example, we did not complete it, what it's going to do, it's going to throw it into the expired appointments and then put a number in there of how many expired you have. And what you would do is visit this record by clicking on it when it's in this screen in that particular area. And then what you would do is either reschedule it or complete it, either way. Or you could write a note within the record to show that it was canceled for cause and you had to do a new one on adding another record for a day in the future. Okay, well, this is pretty straightforward stuff as far as this is concerned, but what I want to do now is show you how to change or add a user screen to add another calendar. If we click on the users, what we're actually looking at here is the different screens that were added for individual users. In the case of the administrator, you cannot edit this one. This is closed and not for you to edit. And over here you'll see this one called Appointments. An appointment add. What you're doing is this is the appointment add calendar. I'll show you when we go to the subscreen how this is used. There's also one in there for quote and one for the manager or the person that's managing the actual information. If you want to add a new calendar, you click the plus up here and it'll add a new calendar by whatever name you put in on a dialog that pops up. So let's go ahead and just click on one and I'll show you what it looks like as far as the actual dialog. The dialog would have, if it was a person's name, it would say their name and their last name, and then their login. Whatever their login is going to be, that would be the login for the user. And as you leave the record, upon completing it, you don't have to click password. You can just click close. It'll come up and it'll either verify the current password or you can add a new password. Signature is not used in this particular case. We don't use it because there's some other stuff tied to it that is not relevant. And that's part of that is the email, and I'll explain that in a bit. If the person's active and he's actually being used within the application, this checkbox will have an active in it. I'm going to go ahead and close this. If I closed it, normally what it'll do is it'll pop up another screen, and what the screen will be for is to add or administer a change to the password. Okay. You do not use multi-language. This is something that is for the administrator to edit, and I'm just going to show you what it looks like. This is part of the guts of the application, and a lot of these things are all programmed in, and we don't want you changing these, so please do not modify this. One of the other things in the last screen we're in for the user, and I'm going to repeat that, is that if you go to the user, let's pull this down again, a lot of pulling down going on here. When you leave the screen and you've added a new record or you're editing it, you need to also create the save for that particular thing. So I'm just going to close it. And typically it'll save the record, but I want to show you on the screen we were looking at prior to this, under the multi-language, you actually have to save it by clicking on this checkbox right here, or it will not apply anything. And you can see where it's saying apply it. This one over here, if you click or look at it, is to duplicate a record. And we don't want you to doing that because it can mess everything up within the application. Okay, let's go back to the calendar by clicking here. And now that we're back in the application for the calendar, I'm going to bring this up just slightly. Let's go ahead and look at the sub-record and how that works. If you add a new one by clicking on this, it's going to bring up this screen. I'm going to bring it up here. We can see it. Okay. On this screen, what we're doing is we're adding information for that particular event or task that you're creating. What I recommend you do when you first come into this screen on the application, if you have not added any customers yet, you can do it, and there's a couple things you can do. If I click on here, I have some default customers I added so that you would have some record stuff, and you can amend these or edit them right in this screen. So if I brought up Mary Smith and her data came up, and say I wanted to change something within this record, I could actually change Mary Smith's information from this screen. It's very important to understand that there is the ability to edit the data within this screen. If I wanted to edit it, I would come down here, for example. Notice when I did the Mary Smith thing, it had a number next to it. This is the linking ID for this record, and that's the same one that would show up at the screen right up here. It says customer ID number 1, and what it does is it replaces the linking of the name of the person you picked with the linking ID, so you can see who is the actual person you're working with. If you come down here, you can see the actual person's name as the primary contact, and in this you'll put the primary contact and repeat that name in there. In this case you could have it, in this case it's not the preferred way to do it. It would be Mary Smith instead of Smith Mary, and I just want to point that out. And then you would fill in these fields, for example, the address, the city, the country, county, state or province, zip code, phone, and email, and so forth. Over here on this side you have the cell phone or the employee, where you're employed or employer, and then the work phone. This would be for the person that you're actually, your client is. You'd put their information in here. If this is an individual and you are doing work for individuals and they have a spouse, you want to put the spouse employer and phone here, and then the spouse's cell phone here, and then the spouse's name here. That way you have both. Now also we're going to show you that you can add related contacts, but I'm going to go back and show you up here at the top some more information. When you're creating a record, you would put in the information for the title of the actual thing that will show up on the screen on the calendar. Now what I tend to do is for the person that I'm using this with, I'd put Mary Smith, colon, and then whatever it is. I would not fill it all the way out here, because once you do that, when it comes up on the calendar, it's very difficult to read. So what I would do in this case is I would go ahead and fill in the name, the colon, and then they go ahead and put what the event is. The priority is either low, medium, or high priority, which shows up on the calendar. If I click in any of these, for example, if I click on manager and quote, then it would add this information and this appointment to those screens. So if I said add appointment and then manager, or I can unclick it to take that calendar off of this particular appointment. So if I wanted to remove it from the calendar for whatever reason, I could go ahead and uncheck it, and it would be removed from the manager screen, for example. The next thing we want to do is pick an icon based on the kind of event that you're working with, either service, schedule, reschedule, reminder, paperwork, meeting, inspection, due, quote, call, or action item. That would go in here and provide say for example, I put quote in there, it's going to have an icon, and it'll put that in there, and that will show up on the calendar. If you were over here and you want to add the start date, you would click the calendar and you'd pick that, and it would go ahead and put that in there. And if I click out of it, it'll put it, it's a little bit tight in there right now for November 11th. But I would put a finish date. If I wanted to put the finish date, I'd put that in there also, so that you would not have an issue with the record. That way you would have the data for the start and finish. And if you wanted to do a repeating thing, and that's not normal, we probably never use that, but if I wanted to run this for a series of days for a repeating date, I'd pick the number of days and I'd put the days in there. You can also do the very similar thing by putting the end date for this. Say it started on November 11th and I'm going to finish it on the 13th. I can go over here and I go down, say to the 14th, because it's a weekend on the 13th. I'd click that, and then what it would do is it would give me a range of dates that would put all those, for example, if they're repeat things that somebody's coming to your business over a period of days. Put the start time by putting, and I'll give you an example of that. It would be 8:00, for example, 8 o'clock space AM or PM. And then if you wanted to do a range of dates, you can put the end date as the end date and whatever the time for the end date would be. Over here it shows who assigned this to the calendar. In this case it was the admin, which is me. And the information, as you're editing it down here, I want to show you something, and this is what I was talking about. I created what I call a default record. If you do not have any default records in, and what I did is I just created the ID number 4 and put new client 1. If you're going to be adding a series of default records, that allows you to edit this right from the screen. So if I picked the default record and there was no data in here because all I had was add client and new client 1, I could now complete all the information in this record as for this new client from this screen, and what it would do is it would go ahead and add that record in the back end of the application on the subscreens. And we're going to show you those subscreens based on this information over here. And you can also edit all the records and screens within here, but you don't have the ability to view a list view or do a find from within here. So you would want to go back, if you had to do that, to the back end of the application, and we'll be showing you that in other videos. Type of client, you have a drop-down list. Now, one of the things that this is doing, I'm doing this on the desktop using a application that allows me to record everything on the desktop. The reason I did that is that in the simulator within Xcode, which writes the iTunes apps, it really kind of makes the fonts look crummy. So and that's only within Xcode. On the actual iPad or iPad device and the iPhone, that would not make the application look kind of funny. The text would all look normal. But so because of the current version of Xcode messing up the fonts, we don't use that. Okay, we also have a follow-up date in here. This is tied to the back end of the application where they will actually flash these up on a list view showing if it's a date coming up that you're in the future, it would be green. If it is past due, it would come up red to tell you that it's currently in back, or you didn't finish it. Okay, let's really look at the guts of this as far as the rest of the application is. If you want to add a custom property within here, you can click this and add whatever it is you want. You can add a new node, a start, a done, and edit it. And then whatever you edit and added here, we'll put it in this. And then you can put a little note right there as far as what that is. That's probably not really that necessary unless it's something unique for this particular record. But I'm going to show you what you can do over here. We talked about customer-related data or related contacts. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the screen to me, and I'm going to show you that there's all this data in here, and it's all filled in like it should be. I put it in there as an individual from here. Instead of I put a business, I put myself as an individual. If it's a family or a wholesaler or retailer, if you want to edit this, you can come over here and add or remove things that you don't want in there. Okay, and these show up in the back of the application, so you have to be aware if you edit it here, it's going to reduce the list of choices that you have over there. And the same thing goes for here. This is slightly different. In the application back end screens, you click on this header for this field, and it will allow you to edit all the stuff within here. We don't edit in this screen because it requires a special screen on the back end to modify or change these. We'll be seeing that when we go into those videos. So what I did, now you'll see the difference, is I actually have a related contact, but in the screen or the screens, I include myself so that I can do finds on myself on the back end where I have my name in there. In this particular case, it says Clement Vaughn. I changed it back to Vaughn Clement. Some people like it this other way. I think it's a lot easier to use if you put it in the other way around, but it is your choice. It shows me as a primary contact, and this is editable within the screen, and it'll change it also within the records in the back end. Type of contact, here it again, it is edited, where you can say type of contact, manager, buyer, seller, buyer, wholesaler, and so forth. And you can add your own and edit those if you want to. The phone number and the cell phone number and the person's email. Now in the back end, there will be a button at the end of the row where you click it, and it'll allow you to come up and edit the individual records. We can't do it in the front end because it wants to go all the way to the back end screens to make that edit, and we'll do that on the back end when we're there. The next thing is the customer client support. The first thing in this is that what it'll bring up is whatever the address is in their client name over here, and here's my address, and you can see it bouncing in there. If I wanted to see more of this screen, I can click over here to remove that so I can see it on the calendar or on the map. Or I can get directions, individual directions, which I can paste in this edit text field over here. If I had turn by turn, or if this is on your iPhone and you're running it there, you can get turn by turn on your iPhone where it vocally tells you. And I believe you can also run MapQuest where it will tell you the information as far as turn by turn also. You can make it a favorite, you can share it with somebody, or you have more options over here. And of course you have all these things up here you can do, and all these things down here you can do as far as adding information. Or you can click on this and it'll bring up the information for this particular thing for the area that you're in. In this case I live in Sedona, so it has Sedona hotels and Sedona restaurants or things that are nearby. and that's kind of important to some people. I can click right on this guy here, and it then gives me a little summary of the same kinds of information. If I drag him like here and let go, you'll see a little bit more as far as information on this side. And of course, these are just the icons you would normally use in MapQuest to get information. And of course, you have the map over here. If you click this off, you have the map where you can follow the directions. You can also zoom in and zoom out to see the information that you want to view. And there's the plus and negative to do that with. Now, up at the top, you'll see there's some tabs. The first one is for customer. And this is customer information from the back end. And you can edit it here. And this is the UDF fields. For example, here's the title field, and here's the input field. And you can have multiple rows, and then you can scroll and add additional rows. And there's 3 fields for titles, 3 for data. And these are scrollable, so you can put pretty much an unlimited amount of data in the field here for an input and edit information. As far as the record, as far as viewing up here, you're just looking at the follow-up, status for what is showing on the back-end screen. And on the back-end screen, if you click this, it'll allow you to go to a different screen where you can edit that particular data in here. You have the ability to either put an actual physical building in here of a business or the primary client in here, and it'll put the photo size. You do not want to go over 400 kilobytes, so what you want to do is reduce the size of the image so that when you put it in here, it doesn't take a lot of space on your iPad or on your iPhone as far as storage of images over on the iPad or iPhone. Contact source, how did you get this contact in there? Well, you have a list. You can type in there just about anything you want. Sometimes it's unique, so I don't put a lot of things in for a drop-down. If it's related to a sale, did you make the sale or not make the sale? You would click that by clicking and putting a checkbox X in there. Let's go over to the activities. Now, this is directly related to what you put in at that title bar up here, but this allows you to go ahead and add the information for the individual activity. And this information will show up for you. It's part of what you've already added. You can write a description in here, and it can be broad as you want it to be. And then there's an actual form when you go to the back end of the application. If you click on the activity portal, it'll bring up a form that you can print. So you can print that to use it either as a handout or send it to an employee or hand it to an employee to do something for an activity where they're responsible for a portion of it. You can have as many activities in here as you want, and they'll look like this on the back end of the application. If you edit it here, you're also editing it in the back of the application. So when you go there, whatever you change here should also be changed there. If I click in here, it's going to allow me to create, as soon as I add data in here, it's going to add this particular field up here and add more data in here as far as that's concerned. Then let's go ahead and go to the meetings. The meetings over here, same similar situation where you're setting up meetings and adding information. And in this particular case, it's got meeting agenda, meeting addressees, meeting notes, and the ID for that individual note was over here. And if you clicked on the icon here in the back end, I'm going to click on it, show it here. It says to print the meeting form, go to the back end of the application and select the meeting you're using with the icon. And that would give you the ability to go ahead and print that through the form on the back end. You don't print forms on the front end of the application. The last one is action items, very similar to the one you saw before, but this is things that either you need to do that are important, or you're sending them to somebody within your business, or they're just things that you put in there that you're noting these things for future things that you need to do as far as for the primary contact. And you can put them in there. And then if you needed to send the form, say, to the contact, you could print the form on the back end by clicking here and sending the form to the client with the data that they expect you to do for them or you're going to do for them. Okay, let's go ahead and if you click on the bar or click outside of over here, it will close that screen. And you'll notice I put in here, if you do not see the client that you're going to be you'll have to add that customer on the back end, or you can select the default user like we did when you drop this down. This is a default user. This brings up a default record where you can edit and add or change the information you want to. The very last thing we have in here that we haven't covered is the notes. Whatever you put in here will show up in the customer record in the back end of the application. It actually can be searched on using the find that we're going to be talking about in the next video. Okay, once you've created your information, you have your title and everything in here, you're set to go back to the front end of the application. I'm just going to put test. in this case, colon, and that way we know what that is. Now on the iPad, obviously you'll have pop-up keyboards that you'll be using, and the drop-downs will look different as you're adding information within an iPad or an iPhone. But if you're using this on Windows or a Mac or on the cloud, then that information would all be the same as you're looking at on this screen. Everything would function exactly the same. Okay, let's close this and see what you have on the other side. It created the next record, number 10, and it shows that the admin put it in there, and it is test, and I'm going to show it as completed, and you'll see that it'll draw a line through completed as far as being done. I'm going to take it back off. But in this particular case, I'm going to do something I don't recommend. I'm going to say, oh, I don't want that, so I'm going to delete it. It's going to say, are you sure you want to get rid of record 10? And I'll say, yeah, I'll get rid of it, and it's gone. So that's how this works. Now, there is a thing down here for preferences. I'm just going to show it to you and show you that this particular screen allows you to see all the icons that are included in the application and how they're used as far as a narrative on them. It'll show you the priority screens. I would keep everything identical in here. One of the things that it did have is the ability to, and I'll just talk about it a little bit to tell you that it's not a good idea. This calendar was devised to have the ability every time something was changed in any record that the current person that has the email for that particular calendar or the user for that calendar would then receive an email saying that something has changed and you can view it. Found out very quickly after I started using this calendar that people do not like that. They don't like getting all those emails. So this is pretty well not used. And if you have to know anything about the application on the calendar, you can click this question mark up here or the one over here. It'll bring up dialogues and information that are built in to tell you how to use the application if you have specific questions about the calendar itself. Okay, so we've covered just about everything that is in the calendar itself. And by doing that, we're also going to be covering a lot of the back-end information as far as how the back-end works. So we're going to kind of just review and show you some of the other things that this application can do on the back-end. Back-end being the item over here. If you wanted to add a calendar client to the calendar, you would use this and all these other screens that we're going to be looking at. So that's the back-end of the application. Now, if you have any questions or you need assistance, you can always contact us through our developer website, which is ontargetsolutions.biz on your internet. If you have any other questions, you can contact us through our website, which the address I just gave you is the website. Okay, thank you for taking this video.